And this Turkey situation, in the few seconds we have left, if the Turkish troops do move into Iraq, and the president has said that would be a bad idea, where does that leave us?
Well, you know, I think Turkey, there is really something tragic there. Turgut Özal, the leader of Turkey, who was a historic leader who could make decisions in 1990, 91, and he sided with America. The problem is Turkey is leaderless. That is really the issue of Turkey today.
Fuad Ajami, General Ralston, thanks. We'll be talking to you as we go along. CBS News coverage of America at War will continue on this CBS News station. Some stations will now have the CBS Evening News. Remind you again, basketball is scheduled to resume on this CBS station tonight at 7 Eastern Time, 6 in the Central Time Zone. I'll see you along the trail. America at War. Tonight, shock and awe. U.S. warplanes unleashed the promised massive bombardment of Baghdad as U.S. ground troops barrel through the Iraqi desert, but they are meeting resistance. Surrender talks with some senior Iraqi military men continue, and U.S. Marines make the ultimate sacrifice, the first Americans to die in combat in the war.
This CBS News special report is part of our continuing coverage of America at War. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening. The U.S. war to disarm Iraq and oust Saddam Hussein intensified dramatically today as the air campaign began with massive bombing raids on Baghdad and elsewhere. The Pentagon says the Saddam Hussein regime is starting to lose control. On this third night of the war, U.S. warplanes launched hundreds of strikes against targets in the Iraqi capital and elsewhere in the country. U.S. ground forces moved through the Iraqi desert. They're well on their way to Baghdad. They have met resistance. They have been in, among other things, tank battles. U.S. Marines now control the strategic port of Qasr, not yet Basra, but Qasr. And oil fields in southern Iraq are being secured. U.S. intelligence says it's confident that Saddam Hussein was in a leadership bunker bombed at the start of the war. His fate, however, is not known. Iraqi television ran some other pictures of him today. And 6 U.S. Marines are the first Americans to die in combat in the war. CBS News correspondents are deployed in key positions with U.S. troops and around the world to bring you steady, clear, accurate coverage as the war continues to unfold. We begin at the Pentagon with David Martin. David?
Dan, with the Army already a third of the way to Baghdad and the Air Force and Navy planning to fire some 1,500 mostly precision-guided weapons in the next 24 hours, the war to get rid of Saddam Hussein is now in full gear.
The regime's center of gravity is Baghdad, and starting at 9 p.m. local time, it was hit by cruise missiles that sent pillars of smoke into the sky and left government buildings in flames. Iraqi TV showed what it said was the damage done to one of Saddam's palaces. In the 24 hours that follow those first explosions, the U.S. plans to attack 1,000 targets throughout Iraq, firing 600 cruise missiles and using virtually every type of warplane in the American arsenal, including the B-2 stealth bomber. But more important than the numbers is the effect it's having on the regime.
The regime is starting to lose control of their country.
Iraqi television continues to show undated pictures of Saddam in charge, but intelligence officials say they have seen no real evidence he's still running things. A voice analysis of this tape of Saddam giving a defiant speech after the U.S. had bombed his compound concluded it was really him and not a double. But like other tapes, there's no way of telling whether it was made before or after the bombing. Intelligence officials remain convinced he and his sons were in a compound in southeastern Baghdad when F-117 stealth fighters dropped 4 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs on it, the first time a new weapon guided by both satellites and a laser beam had ever been used. That was followed by about 20 cruise missiles. If he was really there, it's hard to see how he could have come out in one piece.
There's no question but that the strike on that leadership headquarters was successful. We have photographs of what took place. The question is, what was in there?
Another question is, how much longer will the Iraqi army remain loyal to him? Hundreds of soldiers, including the commander of an entire division, have surrendered, and more have abandoned their equipment and retreated. But not before Apache helicopters knocked out 5 Iraqi tanks. Still, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs cautions against thinking the battle is won.
We must not get too comfortable. We're basically on our plan and moving towards Baghdad, but there are still many unknowns out there.
Perhaps the biggest unknown is what will happen when the forces now advancing on Baghdad come up against the Republican Guards. Those are the troops most likely to fight, most likely to use chemical weapons. And CBS reporter Phil Ittner, who was with the 3rd Infantry Division, says the Republican Guards are trying to stiffen the resistance put up by the regular Army.
We are now getting intelligence, again from U.S. sources, that they have been reinforced by elements of the Republican Guard. Now,
Dan, not everything is going right. A Marine helicopter mistakenly opened fire on one of its own armored vehicles. Fortunately, there were only minor injuries. Dan.
David Barton reporting live from the Pentagon. Now, a report from Baghdad, where correspondent David Chater of CBS News affiliated Sky News in London hung tough during tonight's air attacks. He gives us a sense of what it was like through the hours of intense bombardment today.
Huge amount of fire. It's getting much, much closer. All the air defenses are opening up all around me at the moment. All around me. To the west, there are surface-to-air missiles arcing upwards. A large explosion. Huge. Wow. Very close to us. We've got to watch the windows here. I hope you can still hear me. I'm trying to maintain contact with you. A large billow of smoke. Another large flash of explosion to the west of the city. 4 or 5 huge billows of smoke. A massive shock blast just coming through our windows. I'm going to have to take cover. There are fires burning in a huge arc right in front of me. Very fierce explosions, not just cruise missiles. I'd say there were bombs as well. At least 30 strikes. Very, very fierce attack at the moment. And the attack is continuing on all sectors and all fronts around the center of the city. This is the beginning of shock and awe. It was a dreadful sight. It was very close to us. It's still going on. There's still bursts in the distance. It's now very much moving from the south and the west into the center of the city. Huge amount of percussion, large explosions, a pall of smoke hanging all around the city at the moment, a lot of fires burning. An extraordinary scene at the moment. There's another fire explosion. Watch out, watch out. Oh! Okay, well, those are very large bombs. Those must be the 1,000-pounders, I would have thought. I think the citizens now of Baghdad know exactly what the Pentagon means by shock and awe.
The voice of David Chater in Baghdad. With Allied ground forces 100 miles plus inside Iraq and counting, helping lead the push northward are Army troops of the 3rd Infantry Division. Some elements of the division have now crossed the Euphrates River. CBS's Jim Axelrod is with the 3rd on the move. He reports the troops are pleased but still wary.
The commander of the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division's 1st Brigade combat team says the first day of the ground war, in his words, couldn't have gone better. From the Iraq-Kuwait border to the edge of the Euphrates River Valley in less than 6 hours. U.S. Army ground troops came across the border this morning at dawn. A massive operation. Columns of troops produced Hollywood pictures. Tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles, Humvees and supply trucks. Some of the 10,000 vehicles the 3rd employs. Earlier, a task force had secured the road and cleared it of mines. The task force commander described his encounter with 3 Iraqi soldiers during the process.
We did engage a truck with 3 Iraqis in it last night. What happened? We killed them. 3 KIAs.
3rd Infantry troops then moved north to seize a former Iraqi military airfield. After locating and destroying mines and unexploded bombs left over from Desert Storm, the airfield was secured. And Apache attack helicopters moved in. Another dramatic image. The airfield can now be used as a forward position for missions to the north of here. So far, the 1st Brigade has encountered no resistance and taken few prisoners. Tonight, the commander sat back in his mobile command post and savored what he called a successful first day.
This today is mobile armored warfare at its best.
Still, no U.S. commander is planning on day one becoming the rule here. The South was expected to offer little resistance, as Iraqi troops were pulled back closer to Baghdad. Duplicating day one could well become more difficult, as U.S. troops push further north. Jim Axelrod, CBS News with the 3rd Infantry Division in Iraq.
The United States continues to have some questions about Turkey. The U.S. government has been negotiating with the Turks for months, trying to win cooperation in the showdown with Saddam. Tonight, with the war already on and pretty far along, there is finally a deal of sorts. Turkey has authorized letting U.S. warplanes, including carrier-based attack jets from the Mediterranean, cross Turkish airspace to reach Iraq. In the capital of Yemen, anti-war protests turned deadly today, 3 killed as 30,000 demonstrators tried to storm the U.S. embassy. In Egypt, police used water cannon and tear gas to control anti-war protests in Cairo. In this country, protests, including this one in San Francisco, were mostly peaceful. Many Iraqis had a different reaction as U.S. forces pushed across the border from Kuwait into 2 towns with symbolic and strategic importance. CBS's Mark Phillips in Kuwait City has that story. Mark?
These are U.S. Marines being greeted, if not with garlands, then at least with handshakes, by residents of the town of Safwan in the deep southeast corner of Iraq. This area, populated by Shiites, has no great love for Saddam Hussein and the rulers of Baghdad, who come from the rival Sunni sect of Islam and who brutally put down a rebellion here after the First Gulf War. This war is being characterized as a war of liberation, not conquest, and images of Iraqis helping American soldiers destroy images of Saddam will help. But these images won't. U.S. soldiers taking down the Iraqi flag to raise Old Glory. The Iraqi flag was soon put back up. The assault on this area was a combined British-American effort that began early this morning. Royal Marines of 4-2 Commando waiting to be ferried into battle by U.S. Chinooks. And if there was any question whether some units of the Iraqi military would fight, it was answered on this first night. Their fire was returned with interest. By the end of this long day, they had taken the crucial port facilities along the Shatt al-Arab waterway, the gateway through which humanitarian aid will have to be poured in. And after the devastation wrought on Iraq tonight, that humanitarian issue becomes even more important as the U.S. tries to convince the world this war is also being fought in the interests of the Iraqi people. Dan?
Mark Phillips reporting live from Kuwait City. In a notable success today, U.S. forces captured many key facilities in Iraq's southern oil fields, preventing sabotage by Iraqi troops. It was first reported a handful of wells had been torched. The Iraqis tonight denied that and said what was being torched were oil-filled ditches designed for defense. CBS's Lee Cowan reports that success of protecting the oil fields is thanks in large part to Special Operations Commandos working under cover of darkness.
They are the most dangerous of the dangerous missions, Special Ops. So secret, pictures like these are almost unheard of. For security reasons, all we're allowed to report tonight is that this team was preparing to storm key oil fields inside Iraq to prevent the hellfire that had become Saddam's signature. Failure here isn't an option. The welfare of the invading troops soon to follow depends on how this team shapes the battlefield.
It's exciting enough on its own, but it's nice to know that we're helping kick the whole thing off.
At the mission briefing, their commanding officer put it bluntly.
And it'll be difficult out there. There's a lot of stuff in the air, and there's a lot of things going on. So you've got to be heads up.
On board the lead chopper, equipment is checked and double-checked. Then it's time to wait, to focus, and to pray.
When Special Operations Forces talk about operating under the cloak of darkness, they mean pitch dark. This is a refueling stop less than 2 miles from the Iraqi border. Helicopters land here, refuel, and take off again for the border, all without a single light in sight.
Except for grains of sand turned into sparks by the chopper's whirling rotor. We can't show you the end of this mission. We can tell you it was a success. The Pentagon confirmed Iraq's southern oil fields are under U.S. control. Only a handful were lost to sabotage, and the troops we went with all made it home. Lee Cowan, CBS News, somewhere near the Iraq-Kuwait border.
And up next here on the CBS Evening News, the first U.S. war casualties. Insight into that deadly chopper accident in the desert. Two U.S. Marines became the first American combat casualties of the war today, killed by enemy fire. They haven't yet been identified, but we do have the names of 4 U.S. Marines killed along with 8 British soldiers in a helicopter crash last night. Major J. Aubin, 36 years old, of Waterville, Maine. Captain Ryan Beaupre, 30, of Bloomington, Illinois. Staff Sergeant Kendall Watersby, 29, of Baltimore, Maryland. And Corporal Brian Kennedy, 25, from Houston, Texas. They gave the last full measure of devotion to their country. We honor their memories and we send our condolences to their families. CBS's Byron Pitts is stationed with U.S. Marines flying many of these dangerous chopper missions into Iraq. He has the heartbreaking details of what led up to these deaths in the desert.
It was the first major operation of this war U.S. Marine helicopters would take part in. British commandos were already loaded aboard those CH-46 helicopters before many of their Cobra and Huey escorts had even left the ground. At the time, no one had any idea one of the helos would crash before the night was over, killing all on board.
It looks like right now all our assaults are here. So as soon as the Cobras arrive, they'll be all staged and ready to go.
Their mission, insert hundreds of British commandos, take control of Iraqi oil fields in the south before Saddam could set any more on fire. Those tan-colored tow missiles on the side of the Cobra were for any Iraqi light armored vehicles. Each Huey armed with a machine gun capable of firing 4,000 rounds per minute. Weapons meant to kill men, not machines.
Right now the weather is looking pretty optional, just because of the visibility. You can see the dust all around us. We have to have at least 3 miles of vis to go out and launch on this mission.
But visibility was already less than 2 miles and slipping. Soon it would be dark. But first the helicopters needed fuel. Self-service in the middle of the desert. Later, U.S. and British commandos huddle between Hueys. The mission is close. The mood is light.
Everybody's doing a lot of stuff tonight. Make sure we shake hands and kiss babies on this one.
But not long after it started, the commanding officer called it off. Visibility was less than a mile. A mixture of sand and fog and burning oil wells made even night vision goggles almost useless. However, moments before the abort order was given, the CH-46 crashed. All on board, killed. Eventually, Allied forces finished their mission, but both sides lost friends. Wives lost husbands. Children lost fathers. This lieutenant colonel from Camp Pendleton, California, was one of the commanding officers.
It's a tremendous tragedy. I mean, my heart reaches out to the families, and they're the ones that suffer the great loss with us. But morale-wise, I think we pick ourselves up and we keep going.
This mission proved military supremacy does not mean invincibility. Iraqi guns have already hit U.S. Cobra helicopters. These two have the holes to prove it. But still they fly.
Families back home watching, what would you like to say to them?
I love them. Hopefully I'll see them soon.
One day soon, they hope, when the war is over. With the U.S. Marines, Byron Pitts, CBS News.
Next on the CBS Evening News, profile of a casualty of war. Captain Ryan Beaupre's family and friends remember. As we've reported, 4 U.S. Marines last night became the first American casualties of this war. CBS's Vince Gonzalez examines the life of one of them through the memories of friends and family.
Ryan Beaupre's family last talked to him 2 days before he shipped out in February.
He was just a pilot that was doing his job.
He's a wonderful man.
Beaupre and 3 other Marines died when their CH-46 helicopter crashed in Kuwait in an accident, not an attack.
It doesn't make me angry. I mean, there's a, we need to disarm Saddam and get rid of those weapons of mass destruction, and they're over there doing their job, and this is just, you know, as bad as it is, something that happens.
But the father of Staff Sergeant Kendall Damon Watersby is angry.
President Bush, you took my only son away from me.
In Oceanside, California, near Camp Pendleton, where Beaupre and the other Marines were based, word of the deaths was the news everyone had been dreading.
It just shocked the hell out of me that we are really in war now.
Once you have people that are in the Marine Corps, that they're all family, and you feel for all the other mothers.
Melissa McPherson knows her husband could be killed.
Maybe you didn't join the Marine Corps to serve fries.
That doesn't make it any easier on the people of this military town.
Part of me feels that even one life lost is too many. The other part of me knows the reality of war and sacrifice.
Marine Corps officials say they have grief counselors standing by, as they don't expect these to be the last casualties of this war. Vince Gonzalez, CBS News, Camp Pendleton, California.
We'll have more CBS News in a moment, so stay here with us. Confidence about the outcome of the war helped send stocks soaring today. The Dow gained 235 points. The war is having the opposite effect on airlines. American, United, and Northwest are cutting flights. Northwest is also cutting nearly 5,000 jobs. Here's an update on this third night of the war. As the air campaign began, hundreds of U.S. cruise missiles and smart bombs struck government buildings in Baghdad and other targets around Iraq. U.S. Marines captured an important seaport and another town in southern Iraq. 2 Marines were killed in that fighting, the first U.S. combat deaths of the war. U.S. Army ground forces punched 100 miles plus into southern Iraq. They're a third of the way to Baghdad. They've crossed the Euphrates River. That's part of our world. As CBS Sports brings you college basketball this evening, CBS News will bring you updates on the war throughout the evening. If developments warrant, we will return to continuous war coverage. For now, Dan Rather reporting. See you as we go.
This is CBS.